In this video, I will cover the process for creating a basement type room with both a stacked and a hung platform. I will show you how to create and use a furred wall for both platform styles that will generate the correct wall framing. Let's begin by reviewing the two platform styles. A stacked platform is a more traditional construction technique where the floor joists or trusses bear on top of the wall. With a hung floor platform, the floor joists or trusses are hung from the bearing wall. This construction technique can help to eliminate the need for steps, allowing for a more accessible design. Let's go into the program and begin by creating a basement with a stacked platform. Inside of the program, I already have a main or a first floor created. The first step I want to do in creating a basement is underneath the Build menu, come down to Build Foundation. To create a stacked wall condition, I will use walls with footings. Make sure that hang the foundation platform is not selected. I'm going to come down to the stem walls. Currently my stem wall height is 113 1/8. That will give me a basement ceiling height of 109 1/8. Be sure when you're creating your foundations that you're aware of what your joist or your floor truss platform thickness is. You can find that in your room or your floor defaults. In this case, I'm just using the default template the program ships with. The stem walls that are going to be created with this foundation are an 8-inch stem wall that are furred. Let's go in and take a look and edit the wall foundation detail. My default wall type you can see is an 8-inch stem wall that is furred. I'm going to click on the Define button. Inside this wall definition, you can see that there really are 4 components, technically 5 components that make up this wall. The 8-inch stem wall, an insulation air gap of 1 inch, a stud that's 3.5 inches, and then interior drywall at 1/2 inch, and then a line stile that makes this total wall thickness at 13 inches. If your template plan only ships with a concrete wall, let's go through real quickly on how to create a wall type. Let me use this drop down, and I'm just going to use this 8-inch stem wall that is typically shipping with your template plan. You can create a copy of this wall, and the first thing I like to do is rename this, so I'm just going to call it Furred 2. And I'm going to come down into this area right here, and I'm going to click the Insert button a couple of times. Now the first component, the insulation gap, I'm going to set that at 1 inch. And then on the next component, click on this. This will open up the material dialog. I'm going to go into the plan materials. I should have fir framing as one of the options. I'm going to go ahead and select that. You may also see fir 16-inch on center. There's a 24-inch on center. Those can control how those are framed. Let's go ahead and use one of those. I'll use the 16-inch on center for the framing. Change the thickness in this case to be 3.5 inches. And then on the final component that we added, let's go ahead and change this to a drywall. In my plan materials, I'll just come down, find the drywall, make sure that that is set at 1/2 inch. And you'll notice that my total thickness, again, is at 13 inches. I now have the wall type set up. You may want to change the fill style. You see the view in the plan view. I may want to change the fill style on this material in here. Just click on it, and you can choose a style in here, sometimes maybe just a solid. You'll find angle hatches if you're using a black and white print. But now you can see the plan view of this wall style right in this view right here. With that wall created, you now have access to that and use that as the default wall style that we will use to build the foundation with. So with the settings not selected to hang the platform, the stem wall at 113 1/8, that will give us the same ceiling height as the main floor at 109 1/8. Let's go ahead and click the Build option with the OK button. I'm going to let the program derive the foundation from the first floor. Our foundation gets created. Notice the floor indicator switches to 0. When you take a 3D overview of the room, you can see that in fact there are 2 different wall styles. If I were to turn on my framing layer, let's go ahead and toggle that on to the 3D framing. I have my floor platform and wall framing toggled on. You can use the delete surfaces, and you can see the framing behind that wall. So this is the way you can create your stacked platform with a single furred basement wall. Let's go in and take a section view. I'm going to use the back clip section view right through the center. And then using the dimension tool, if I use the auto story pull dimension tool, come in here, place the dimensions. Let's zoom in and let's add an additional dimension call out right at the top of this plate. Notice that our dimension is 109 1/8. That matches the floor platform above. And if I were to change this view to include the framing components in here to the section view that has framing turned on, you can see the detail. You can see how that wall is stacked. Notice that my footing is centered on the stem wall. Make sure that you use that option. If I am in the plan view, you tap on this wall and double click to open it up. One of the things that you'll find underneath the foundation component is on the footing, you can choose to center that on the main layer and zoom in. You can see where that is. Otherwise, if you don't center it on the main layer, you can then change the offset and control how you want that set up. So there's a setting in here if you want to control how that's built and make sure that you have your correct footing. So in this case, we have a stacked platform with a furred wall that's a singular wall made up of a stem wall, an air gap, and an interior wall. Let's take a look at the second type of platform where it is hung off of the bearing wall. Let's go back into the build floor option for the build foundation. And this time I'm going to mark that the platform is going to be hung on the first floor inside of the foundation walls. When you do that, in this case, notice that our previous stem wall setting gives you a basement ceiling height that's quite a bit lower. So I have to adjust that based on the floor platform depth and make that change right in here. So I'm going to set that at 125 inches. You press the tab key and it will tell you what the information is. Depending on what your floor joist or floor truss is, it will vary on how deep you're going to set that, but the program will tell you. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the default wall type from that furred wall that we created earlier. And in this case, I'm just going to use a standard 8-inch stem wall for the default foundation wall. Let's go ahead and click OK to build the foundation. We'll derive it from the main first floor. And now when the foundation is built, it's just using a singular stem wall. And when you take a 3D overview here, you can see that the stem wall is a bit deeper than it was previously, and I don't have any furred walls inside of here because I want to hang that floor platform. Let me show you the steps in creating that furred wall where the platform will bear on top of that wall but be hung off of the outside bearing concrete wall. Inside of the plan view, I'm going to go through and I'm just going to draw an interior wall in here. So I'm just going to click and drag this interior wall. Now, like before, I created a special wall type for the furred wall type on the stack platform. I'm going to open up this basic interior 4 wall and I'm going to click define. I want a specific wall type that does not have drywall on the inside. Let's go down and take a look. I've created a interior 4 one-sided wall, and if you look at the information here, on the exterior I have drywall at 1/2 inch, I have the stud at 3.5 inches, and then instead of drywall I have a 1-inch air gap. So just like we created the wall before, you could create a copy of your interior 4 and just change the drywall that's typically on the inside to an insulation air gap, and I increased it to 1 inch. So depending on how you're doing your fur wall, this thickness will change. The total thickness of all of those layers is 5 inches. You zoom into the plan view, you can see how that looks. Let's go ahead and click OK. Now the program is going to give you a notification that the drywall on the exterior appears to be an exterior wall. To avoid that program warning, you could change the exterior layer to be the insulation air gap and then set the interior layer to be the drywall. Both techniques work. In the latter technique that I just mentioned, the program won't give you this warning. And I'm going to change the wall type to that one-sided wall. And once I've finished that, I'm just going to come around and trace out the inside of this wall. Now once this is completed, you may have noticed when I did this, it generated an invisible wall, because when you have it's called an island room, a room inside of a room, so to speak, it creates these. It's very important. One of the things that you do for these walls is you mark them as furred walls. If I grab all 4 walls by using my shift key and clicking on them and then open them up, you're going to find one of the settings on the structure panel down here towards the bottom is to mark it as a furred wall. What that's going to do is tell the program that you will ignore making an inside room on this outer area, and then we can actually get rid of that invisible wall. So let's go ahead and pull these walls back to the stem wall. A little bit of busy work just to snap those back. Let's go ahead and pull those to the stem wall. Now I don't have an extra room in between the two walls. Let's go back to our camera view. You can see that interior furred wall is lower, which will bear the platform on it. The concrete wall will hang the platform on it. If I change my view to a 3D framing view, you can see how that framing has occurred with the joist bearing on top of the interior furred wall and then hanging off the concrete wall. Now, one last thing I want to show you. You may have a mixed foundation. Let's say you have a walkout basement, and this front wall may be a stick framed wall, and you want the platform to come over the top of it and be a stacked wall type. Let's go ahead and select the wall and change that wall type. On the wall type panel, I'm going to come down and I'm going to choose a stick framed stone type wall. You can see how that looks. And then over on the structure panel, I'm going to remove the setting that was created when we built the foundation to hang the floor platform. And then we'll close the dialog. And in this case, you can see that we have a stacked floor platform on this side, and on the back side you have a hung platform. And so in this case we have a mixed style foundation. Well, that wraps up the video. Thanks for watching. Remember, we have several support articles and other videos available you can take advantage of.